Sorry, I'm just cleaning some blood off the table. That's not where the garbage can is. Anyway, hey everyone, welcome to Music is a Journey. Why am I cleaning blood off the table? Well, because the other day I was trying to get a label off a cardboard mailer and I couldn't peel it off, so I took some scissors to try to cut it out, and then while I was still holding everything, I thought I'd close up the scissors to put them away, and my finger was still in between the blades. So, looks like I ended up getting blood all over the table. Who knows, wherever else I managed to get blood. Anyway, today's video is in lieu of another video that I have been thinking of doing for about 4 weeks now. The problem is that this other video requires me to organize a bunch of research, get my thoughts all together, get everything down nice and neatly so that I can speak about it like I know what I'm talking about and sound maybe at least somewhat intelligent. And I'm not particularly good at doing that. So instead, just last night I got an idea for something different, which is what I'm going to do. So yesterday I was watching the YouTube channel Death by Unicorn. He had a video about sophomore albums by progressive metal bands. Those albums that he thought were real masterpieces. And I really enjoyed the video. I had a lot of the albums, or at least I knew most of the bands, which is really cool. So it got me thinking as I was driving around later on to do some shopping. I was playing the 5th album of a band in my car, and I thought, you know, this 5th album is really great. I realized I like every song. And that got me thinking of when I listen to that one band, I often associate them with another band whose musical style is quite different, but they have some similarities. And that band's 5th album is also one where I was thinking like, wow, what a terrific album this is. It's just like, their stuff is good, but this 5th album is fantastic. So it got me thinking, what are some other bands that released a 5th album that has a really important place in their discography? So that's what I thought. I'd pull off 7, it turned out to be 10, it turned out to be 12, and then I put a cap on it right there, because otherwise I'm going to come up with super long video as usual. So let's try to skip through this a little more quickly. You'll notice AC/DC over here. It has nothing to do with If You Want Blood and me cutting my finger. It was that when I was thinking of this, I thought, oh yeah, AC/DC, Highway to Hell. Yeah, that's High Voltage, Dirty G, Dirty Deeds, Let There Be Rock, Powerage, and Highway to Hell. But then, of course, I remembered, oh, that's right, that's the international way of counting. If you count it the Australian way, this is their 6th album. But it was a really important album, and since I'd already pulled it out, I thought I'd just put it aside and give it a quick mention. But I know, Ben Rankins, down in Australia, he's been kind enough to watch a lot of my videos recently, and he always leaves a comment. Thanks, Ben, I appreciate it. And if I say that this is AC/DC's 5th album, he's going to be quick to call me out on that one. And I get it, you know, because Triumph's first 2 albums released in Canada were also amalgamated onto a compilation for one single album released internationally. So I get it. Okay, anyway, so let's get on with the list. This is actually covering a broad spectrum of things. It's going to cover like 70s stuff, it's going to cover more recent stuff and things in between. It is not exclusively prog or metal or whatever. So the first one on the list, one of the first ones I came up with, is Black Sabbath's Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. This is not to say that it is their best album. Obviously Paranoid or Master of Reality get a lot more attention, some people loving Volume 4, but I think that when it comes to talking about really great albums by Black Sabbath, this one here is often in the conversation. I think many people say their first 6, you know, up to Sabotage, was where they really ruled the roost as far as being masters of early 70s heavy rock, hard rock, metal, whatever. So Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, I thought, is definitely worth mentioning. It is also a step ahead for them. They are starting to branch out in their musical styles. There's that instrumental on here, National Acrobat, I think it is, Fluff, which is you know, not heavy stuff at all. They also have the Spiral Architect with an orchestra. So yes, they're still heavy, and still complex, maybe branching out in complexity, but also branching out in what they're doing more so than what they did in the past. So worthy of mention. Classic rock review. the YouTube channel. I just this morning watched him as he talked about his top 10 favorite Yes songs, and at number 2 he picked the title track from Close to the Edge. Sorry, that was his number 3 pick. Starship Trooper was number 2. But this is Yes's 5th studio album, and obviously a classic. When I did my kind of internet rankings of progressive rock albums, like what are the top progressive rock albums of all time, and I went around and checked all these different lists and then gave an average score, Yes, Close to the Edge tied with King Crimson in the Court of the Crimson King for the number 1 spot of the most highly rated prog albums of all time. For me, the title track, Close to the Edge, it's either my favorite Yes song or my second favorite, depending on how I feel at that moment, but I really love that song. It is one of the best long-form songs, in my opinion. The album itself, side 2, also has some great tracks. And You and I is a really beautiful piece, again, going through many movements, and Siberian Kotru is an incredible piece of work, lyrically and musically. This album was so good that drummer Bill Bruford thought, I cannot do anything else better with this band, and so he quit and went to join King Crimson for their 5th album, Lark's Tongues in Aspic, which I had considered for the list, except that I think Red, the 7th album, just gets that much more praise, and of course the debut. So anyway, Yes's 5th album, Close to the Edge, fantastic piece of work as their 5th album, and also probably, no, I think for surely, the band's top favorite album in the world. Coming alongside that, we also have Genesis with Selling England by the Pound. Once again, we have the addition of some new musicians, as we did with Yes a couple of albums back. They released a trio of super excellent albums, I think. Nursery Crime, Foxtrot, and Selling England by the Pound, I think, are just, if you get into Genesis at all, you must have those 3. I do favor Nursery Crime more just because I like the raw sound, a little bit heavier sound, but this album is also a phenomenal piece of work. Firth of Fifth is probably my second favorite Genesis song, and also just Dancing with the Moonlit Night is on here. Cinema Show is also pretty cool too. This is, I think it's Genesis's highest rated album. Once again, when I did my top albums of progressive rock research, this was one of the top albums and the top album of Genesis to make the list. So certainly Genesis's 5th album is also top of the heap for that band. And following along those same lines, here is Jethro Tull's Thick as a Brick. So, Aqualung, their 4th album, is the album that really launched them forward in the eyes of the public, and then Thick as a Brick is, again, it's that album that just makes it into the top 10, maybe even top 5 progressive rock albums of all time. The album being, of course, a one-song album that's split over 2 sides but comes in many parts with a very clever story and a whole packaging deal with newspaper inside, and it was such an impressive thing. I gotta say, geez, I actually do prefer Aqualung a bit better just because I prefer the different songs, but parts of this are really, really great. I'd say the one big thing that I don't think is necessary on here is the drum solo part, because you know, everyone and his dog was doing drum solos at the beginning of the 70s. Actually, I'm going to make a video about that coming up. 10 albums that feature drum solos. How about that? But anyway, it's on here too. But still, yes, Thick as a Brick, the top-rated Jethro Tull album of all time, one of the top 10 progressive rock albums of all time, and their 5th album. So this next one here, I felt I wanted to mention this album, and I'm sure a lot of people will agree to an extent, but maybe this is not the band's most well-known or, you know, highest rated album. However, this is Styx's Equinox album, their first one on A&M, the last one with John Kuralewski on guitars and vocals, bit of songwriting. It is not exactly my favorite Styx album, but it just has this feeling about it that it is a great album. Although, I will confess, the you know, Lorelei, I really don't need that song. That's okay. Maybe we could have put like a Ballerina or Crystal Ball from the other album instead. But anyway, on the next album. But anyway, yeah, overall, this album just has a really good impression on me. There are a lot of the songs I like. I really like what the band is doing in the songs. And I like John Kuralewski's contributions, especially the one Dear Mother. It's actually one of my favorite songs off of here. And when I hear people talking about Styx's discography, a lot of people pick this one as their favorite. Certainly as one of the favorites if it's not The Grand Illusion or Pieces of Eight. So yeah, it's not The Grand Illusion, which is the band's most highly praised album, I think, but it is definitely an album worthy of praise, and it is also an important step as they now signed with a major label, and although the next album would tip down a little bit, they were one more step away from reaching their apex, or the beginning of their apex. So let's get on to something a little bit heavier now. We're going to move into the 80s. This is Iron Maiden's Power Slave. Now, I know a lot of people will pick Number of the Beast or Peace of Mind or Seventh Son of a Seventh Son as their favorite Iron Maiden album, but I was there at the time. I got into Iron Maiden between Number of the Beast and Peace of Mind, so I followed along with what was happening with the band, and I remember Number of the Beast, that was one like the guys all got into it, and Peace of Mind came out and it didn't have the same general appeal as Number of the Beast did. But when Power Slave came out, it was just like the box opened and it just spread everywhere. Suddenly, so many people around me were listening to Iron Maiden. And of course, you know, they had the videos. 2 Minutes for Midnight was actually a really catchy song and cool video. The extended piece, the 14-minute plus Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, you know, suddenly a lot of junior high school guys thought, you know, poetry was cool, and English teachers thought that heavy metal was not cool. But I feel, yeah, this is the album that really made Iron Maiden an international big name band, as opposed to just an international heavy metal band. So that's my pick for that one, Power Slave. Did see the concert too, my second concert I ever went to. Okay, Voivod fans, I'm going to throw in Nothing Face as well, because when I first started exploring progressive rock, knowing what progressive rock was, and visiting prog archives daily to find out what was going on, it seemed that Nothing Face was the most talked about Voivod album. In Voivod's heavy metal fan circles, or metal fan circles, you're probably going to hear Dimension Hatros or Killing Technology mentioned more. A lot of people now like Angel Rat. But I think, like, my first impression when I found that Voivod are actually considered a progressive band, it seemed that in the progressive territories, Nothing Face was the number one pick. And yeah, I just have that feeling that this is also where Voivod hit probably their biggest stride in commercial success. After that, you know, they'd been climbing up to this point, and after that I think Angel Rat split a lot of fans, and of course the band suffered the loss of Blackie the bass player leaving, and from there on it was a kind of, you know, finding their way through the 90s. But certainly I think Nothing Face is an album that is really important in the Voivod discography, and a unique album for sure. See this black album? Yeah, you know what it is. There is a snake coiled up here, and there's a band logo up here. This is Metallica's 5th album, the self-titled album, or the Black Album. Once again, this is the album that just catapulted the band into mega stardom. Enter Sandman, the video, that was just, you know, suddenly people who didn't like heavy metal could dig Enter Sandman. And you had some of the slower songs on here too, like The Unforgiven. The band really spreading out, stretching out, and James Hetfield, already from the previous album, learning to sing more, so showing that he actually could sing properly and not just have that thrash metal vocal style that he had on the earlier albums. Usually when it comes to Metallica in metal circles, Master of Puppets is the biggest album, and even in progressive rock, Master of Puppets is probably the one that is talked about the most, at least based on my experience reading metal music archives and prog archives. But as far as commercial stardom goes, this I think is the band's biggest album, and it is one of the biggest selling hard, heavy music type albums of all time too. Okay, so let's get a little bit heavier now, and let's take a look at Opeth's 5th album, Blackwater Park. This is an album that is often included in the top progressive metal or top heavy metal albums of all time. Again, you know, a band that started out and developed, changed members. Still Life was a fantastic album, but this is the first time where the band and Michael Åkerfeldt began collaborating with Steven Wilson of Porcupine Tree. I think Steven also does a guest vocal here on the second track, I think it is. Bleak, might have been Bleak. But yes, this is a phenomenal album. I think it's one of the albums in Rolling Stone's list of top 100 metal albums of all time. A lot of lists of top metal or progressive metal or death metal, whatever, put this up near the top. This is actually the album that got me into death metal, because I picked up Heritage and I thought, hey, this Opeth band is pretty cool, but I was not a person who was into this level of extreme metal, especially the growly vocals. I didn't like so much, in spite of my interest in extreme metal in the 80s. However, this album made me think, hey, I actually like these vocals. And then Still Life was like, okay, that's it. I'm ready to hear more death metal now. So yeah, for me, an important album, and certainly in the band's career, probably one of their peaks. I know some people probably like Still Life. A lot of people, maybe Ghost Reveries is better. But I think overall this is their fifth album, is their most appreciated. So yeah, Dream Theater's fifth album, Metropolis Scenes from a Memory Part 2, a concept album with guest Terry Brown playing the part of the psychiatrist. I think this is a great album. This was my second Dream Theater album. I had Images and Words first, but I got this one next, and this one just, again, sold me on the band. Okay, I've got to hear more Dream Theater because this is really great. It has what you'd expect from the band, with a lot of their tight, complex, progressive metal, especially like the Dance of Eternity is often cited as one of the most fantastic examples of a heavy metal instrumental ever. But the band play a variety of stuff on here. There's also some more mellow tunes, and I think it's the end of side 1 there, this scene 5, Through Her Eyes. I really love that one. I think James LaBrie can sing very beautifully softer songs. He could have been like a hair metal ballad singer. No problem. Well, he was in that band Winter Rose before, which I think was a kind of more melodic hair metal style band. Anyway, a terrific album. The story being somewhat inspired by the movie Dead Again. Past life people, current life, someone in the past life also being in the current life, and danger abounds while mysteries need to be solved. Really terrific. And because I really liked that movie, when I listened to this album, I recognized the connection, and that just made me warm up to it even more. Okay, so that is, I think that was 9. I'm going to put in special mention here because I kicked AC/DC off for that technicality of this not being their fifth. But I want to mention Cowboys from Hell from Pantera, which I actually don't have, but that is also an extraordinarily important album in the band's discography, because they had come through the 80s as a maybe more typical type 80s metal band, but once they came out with Cowboys from Hell, they really hit their sound, the sound that they would carry on into the 90s, and it would also make them one of the most important metal bands of the 90s. And I think because of that, they just said, never mind, forget our first 4 albums. We have, whatever, don't listen to them. Which is a bit of a shame, actually, but I thought power metal was actually pretty good. Yeah, so Pantera's Cowboys from Hell is a super important album in that band's discography, because it was just so good that they, you know, kicked their 4 other previous albums out the window. Defenestrated them. So, I'm going to mention the last 2. These are the 2 that I was thinking about in the beginning. So the first one, this is last year's album by Blood Ceremony, The Old Ways Remain. This, of course, being a band playing that early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, heavy rock, heavy psychedelic rock, a little bit 60s pop sound as well, singing songs about witchcraft and so forth, and Alia O'Brien, lead vocalist, also playing flute and keyboards. We've got some saxophone and violin guesting on here. Just, I love every track on this album. So this is the one that inspired me to make this video of about album number 5 being such an important album or fantastic album in the band's discography. So that's Blood Ceremony. I got it in plastic here. How do I get it out of this plastic? I have to open it at the back. Never mind. There it is, Blood Ceremony, The Old Ways Remain. And the other one that I said I often associate with Blood Ceremony is Unleash the Archers, their 5th album. Abyss, coming out in 2020, winning a Juno Award for Best Heavy Metal Album of the Year, and getting a lot of accolades that year, especially vocalist Brittany Slayes being chosen in the top 10 or even #1 position for Best Female Vocalists in metal. So that's really, really cool. And they've got their 6th album just about ready to come out. I think some people have already heard the whole album to give their reviews. It's coming out any moment now, so I'll be making a video about that when I get it. But this was such an extraordinary album because they started out as a melodic technical death metal band with harsh male vocals and clean female vocals, and they very quickly progressed into a more power metal style band doing fantasy theme concept albums, science fiction fantasy themed concept albums, and they have become such a fantastic power metal band. But on this album here, they also included a lot of keyboards to give it a kind of synthwave feel in places, and also more layering of the vocals. So I feel that this album just really took them up like several notches above all the great stuff they had produced before. Again, a band that was climbing, and then they just, launched upwards with this album. So really excited to hear the 6th album. This is their 5th one. Fantastic work, and probably an album that has put them into the eyes of metal fans, female-fronted metal fans, and power metal fans in the world. So then that wraps up this video. That's 12 albums that I wanted to talk about, plus honorable mention going to a 6th album. And yeah, if you have some favorite 5th album releases, please go ahead and mention them. Of course, there were many other bands I could have picked, but I didn't want the list to get outrageously long. So please go ahead and tell me in the comments, what is a 5th album by a band that you think is really, really great, maybe one of the best in their discography. And then, yeah, I will hopefully not cut my finger again with scissors and get that other video together in the fairly near future. Okay, everyone, thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Take care all. Bye.